Hey, it's Joe Lines, and in this video, I'm going to talk about what I've been up to, what I've been automating lately, and I got a little list on my side here. So, just an FYI, I've worked on the outline for the intermediate AutoHotkey Udemy course. The current intro to AutoHotkey is still available, and if you go to my site, there's a coupon code for like $9.99, which is the cheapest price you can get. And hopefully, at some point, I'll have some time. I got the next couple weeks at least, maybe month of solid work on two of my side businesses. It's funny, I got to add that to my list here before I forget it, so I can just give you a high level what I'm doing with the other one. So let me type that. And so starting off, so I've been working on the Udemy course, or I started to lay out the foundation, the questions, the subjects, the categories. That one's going to be much longer than the other one because there's a lot that could be considered intermediate. And I'm probably going to, maybe I'll even break it into two courses or do something with it because it's just a lot. AutoHotkey is amazing. There's so many things you can do. It becomes a problem. And that was just part of the problem when you learn it. There's so many different directions you can go. And I think part of the stuff for me having the Udemy course, it isn't that I'm brilliant and explain things clearly. It's I give structure, right, of learning things in sort of in some order, right? Because of course you really should adapt it to your own needs. But it's overwhelming what AutoHotkey can do. It is by far the most amazing tool that I'm aware of. So the next one, find and click. Now I demonstrated this in our last webinar at a high level, but we've revisioned, redone a lot, and I shouldn't say we because Maestri's been doing all the stuff. So let me go ahead and launch it here, and let's see if it's not done yet, but we're getting close. And it's kind of like a macro recorder, but for finding things on a screen, and then if you want to click it, or double click it, or right click, or send text to it. So let me demonstrate. Let's see what would be a good one. Let's open up a new. Let me close this guy. No, I don't want to save it. All right. So let's say I wanted to fill in this thing here. So I'm going to hit F1. Well, actually, I got to activate Grabby first. And I don't know if we'll probably change the name of this, but this is where you start doing the mouse. So I'm going to do a mouse click, and this is going to be the anchor. So let's just use that. And I move away and hit F1 again. So now it says, okay, let's say, now if I wanted to move there, first I can say display matches. Oh, look, it found it, right? It's blinking. If I want to, so I changed it to move. If I hit test, it'll move it right there for me. If I wanted to, let's say, click it, I'll just change this to, it's going to be a left click. And now when I hit test, it's going to hit save. And that, of course, this box is going to pop up here, right? So I don't want to save it. But what's cool is I can stream these together. Now, actually, let's see. Let me do test again. Now, this window would pop up. Now, I could just send, if I was on AutoHotkey, I would just send it some text. But let's say I want to send text. So I'm going to look down here. See this F2? This was F1, F2. Again, I got to have it focused. There we go. Now, F2, what do I want to look for? So let's look for this. And I'm going to move away and hit F2 again. That's because if you highlight it, then if you're over it, it might affect the coloring, and you don't want that. So now where do I want my offset to be? I'll put it here. And I'm going to say Joe's test. Display matches. Great, it worked. Now, instead of hitting test here, let me close. Can't hit cancel here, and it's going to do, if I hit test, it's going to do everything in this queue, right? So it's going to first click the save. Hopefully it'll wait long enough for this next window to come up. I think it should. And it's going to put in a name. Of course, it's going to sit there. Let's see it. So there. So notice it clicked it, hit save, added here, but of course then we'd still have to hit the save button. So let's add a third step. So again, I'm going to highlight Grabby, hit F1. I'm going to look for that save button, move away. And now this one I can say display matches. Okay, it found it. And that's going to be a left click. Great. Okay, we should be good. So I'm going to hit cancel here. Now it should actually do those three things for me, right? So I'm going to hit test. Goes up, clicks it, saves, adds words. And it looks like it, for whatever reason, it didn't hit the save button. Which again, it's still, we're in the works, right? Let me display matches here. So it still found it. Now let's hit the test. Let's see if it'll click it. So there's something, and actually I brought this up to make sure. Let's try to zero in. We're going to zero in a little on the save button and display matches. So it's still finding it. And now we'll test it again. And this is one I brought up with Mace Ruth. Actually, it's funny because he's waiting for me to get done with this video to discuss it. So it's weird. How can it display the matches? It finds it, yet when you hit test, it doesn't find it. So this is one we're going to have to work on. But you get the idea, right? So it's a very easy way that you can do multi-step things for almost anybody. There's not a lot to it in the sense there's a little bit of getting used to the program, but you can write it into a program and then, of course, export it to AutoHotkey and then throw it into a loop or do what you want, right? So or put it into your script. That's what this export here button. So if I hit export, it copies it to the clipboard, and now let me hit cancel here. When I paste. So, actually, let me do just the function call. Let me get rid of this. That was the function and everything. If I hit paste, because that'll be in your library. So if I hit export here and come back in and paste. So this is the 3 calls, right, to the functions. Hopefully you know what functions are. If not, I got a lot of videos on that, and they're amazing. But this would be the code you put into your script, and you can, encode it around other things. You might have a trigger for this, a hotkey to launch it. Who knows, right? But so we've been working on that. It's not quite done, but we're getting there. So let's see what was next. Set timer example. So I made a video because Jackie and I had done a podcast on a set timer, and let me see if I guess it's not here. So I think I have, what is it? Control Shift P. Yeah, set timer. I'm trying to see if it's in my history. I can pull it up. Well, I don't have to show that example, but if you're not used to using set timers, they're a great way to kind of fake multi-threading in AutoHotkey, because AutoHotkey is single-threaded, and it is, and it's going to go in one way. So if you're going along your script and you have a message box pop up, that will lock up your script. It won't do anything else. But with a set timer somewhere else, you can actually have it go do other things even while that message box is up. It does a lot more than that, but that's the simplest example of how powerful and helpful they are. So I did a video on that. On LinkedIn, I did a fair amount of stuff. I automated writing personal invitations. So I used the filter. Let's just go to LinkedIn. And part of it's because I want to connect with as many people in that use AutoHotkey as I can, right? But also one of them, I'm going to use it for my targeting for my Intro to AutoHotkey Udemy campaign. But I came in here and I said, let's search for people who have AutoHotkey in their profile. I think I'll probably have to change this to people after just to make sure. And then I said, let's look at where my connections are like second level. Now I only have 38 because I've connected to so many of them, right? But let's just pretend. So some of these, see how I can hit connect? And when you hit connect, you can actually say add a note. And here's where I would add a personalized message to Trent. And so with AutoHotkey, I wrote a loop that would go over this and send a personalized invitation to people who were second and third level connections. Right now I did it outside the United States, but I got to come back and do it within the United States, because if you have over 1,000, LinkedIn will only show you 1,000 at a time. So I automated that process. Then I went back and I got the full list. So let's go back here to, let's include third. This will be a much bigger list. So here's 3,000 people. But I forced it to be just outside the US. This was like 967 or something. And I automated looping over them just to get their URLs, because I'm using, it's not in that one. Hold on. An API from People Data Lab, and there's an API that you can use there, and you can provide them with a LinkedIn URL of a person, and it will return back things like not just from LinkedIn, right? It's using that as a unique identifier for them. So it'll bring back like their phone number, email addresses. There's multiple. It'll bring back their job titles, their skills, their degrees, where they went to school. I think like their level of focus in like mine was market research in one, their locations. And so I took 1,000, you get 1,000 a month for free to do this. So I went out and I extracted 1,000 from there that had AutoHotkey in their profile, and then I looped over them. And, let me see if I saved the link here. If I saved the link in my Word, let me bring it over so you can see it, so I don't sound like I'm a crazy person. Don't read that list. That's a cheat sheet. But let's see if it's going to... No, I did some work for someone on, unfortunately, I'm not LinkedIn AutoHotkey contacts. That's probably, here we go. So here's an example, which we'll cover either in a webinar or a podcast or something with Jackie. But this was an additive tree of the job functions they had. And so on an additive tree, the closer they are, the higher the correlation. So people who work in automation also were test engineers. I know that because this line here, it's a somewhat short distance, right? And for, I don't know what junior, right? I don't know why that's in a function. I guess they had the word function in their title, and it was a separate word. But founder with tech support. So these are ways you can learn. So there was job function. There were, what is this one? Still the same one. Skills. And you look at these and they make a lot of sense. People who have AutoHotkey also had VBA, right? A lot of things that really, really make sense in here. I think these are pretty cool. And job title. So the other one was job function. This one's job title. And interests. This was pretty cool also. And locations, there's a little bit of that. So where are people moving around? And that's what I did with those. I have all the granular data, but this is an aggregate, so I don't mind sharing the aggregate, right? It's the people person stuff I'm not going to share for their privacy. But you guys should be proud if you're using AutoHotkey, right? So, all right. Well, let's get the cheat sheet out so you guys don't start reading, which I wouldn't blame you. I also had my alum. I'm on the board of my college where I got my master's in market research, and they have a research, what do you call it? I forget what it's called, convention type thing. And so they wanted a way, even though they had emailed people several times, they wanted a way to personalize, like writing them and asking them if they're going to attend the meetup. So in LinkedIn, I automated that message where not the invitation to connect, but I automated, because I'm connected with I don't know, probably 400 of them. And there's like 450 people right in my program that have graduated. It's a small program. So anyway, I automated a personalized message saying, "Hi, Mike, did you hear about," and this, and then I said, I think there's something like there's, 4 more days for early registration. And man, I had a lot of replies. I also asked them to share it. And so a lot of people said, well, I can't go, but I will share it. Thank you. Again, they thought, which I did, they thought I was writing them personally, right? This is why it's a great way, AutoHotkey's a great way to personalize things, messages, but do it in bulk. I did that within LinkedIn. If I had sent it from an email, it wouldn't seem like most people would think, well, you can fake an email and personalize it and do a mail merge, right? But on the messaging within LinkedIn, for most people, they're not going to think that's been automated. So I did that. My little screen clipper tool, with the OCR. So where would I get a good image for that? Let's see. I'll probably have an ad on my Yahoo somewhere, right? Oh, there we go. All right. So notice this is an image, right? I can't, or if I do click it, it would be bad. And since it'll take me there, which I don't want. But in my screen clipping tool, I can highlight, anything. And now if I hit Control T, watch down here, it's going to say performing OCR on it. This may take a while, and then it grabbed. So it had that one, a little funky one, and then grabbed this and put it on my clipboard. So now if I actually paste it, let's just paste it here. You'll see it. Here's the text, right? So this thing I had released before. It's on my website. But occasionally it would come back with an error saying, hey, this image wasn't there. It's broken, and I'd have to redo it. And so I added one step to just say, check if this file is here. If it's not there, I can't remember how I wrote it. And it wasn't wait until it's there. I think I put it into a loop, go up above and do it again and just keep doing it until the file exists and then proceed forward. So far I haven't had it balk at me and say that there's a problem, an error capturing. Now that little line there is going to be funky. But let's see how it does on this one. So this is on my website. Oh, that's weird. Interesting. Kind of little problems there. But on some things, especially like if I'm trying to get a book and I want to send it to some of my friends, some parts of a book, I'll use Google Books to go in and look at the text, and then I'll use this tool to go grab it, and I can get a lot of the text really well. So it's a great way to be able to share stuff. Again, that's on my website. If you look for a screen clipping tool with OCR or something like that, you'll find it. Jackie was the one that put the stuff from Tesseract, so for the OCR stuff. So that's credit to him. The IWB2 Learner tool, I demonstrated this in the webinar too. This tool, so this one, it's on my website now, and let's open up IE. And I added, what's a one with frames? I think actually, again, Yahoo probably and Gmail too probably have frames, but I'd have to log in. Oh, and that's, how did I get my wife's account? That's weird. Let's go, whatever. I'll just demonstrate this and I'll explain the other one. So I had Masonry add a class breakout, so for class name, because it used to be in here, which was fine, but you'd have to go and find it. This way now it's isolated. The other thing is if there are frames, which see if, oh, there we go. There's some frames, right? You see them here? I made this where it's a little bit easier to read, but also that it's in red, because if you have frames, I'm not going to say you're screwed, but you got to attack it differently. And even for someone who has a lot of experience with it, I was talking to Tank about it, and he's like, yeah, frames suck. You know, they just do. So they're a little, it's not that they're problematic. It just takes more time to connect to them. So it takes practice. But anyway, so now these pop a little bit more. And I think we made it a little bit bigger and a little easier to read. So we updated that. That's on my website. Someone had written me and they were doing something in Outlook, and I think they had to check like 20 different folders to see if there were new emails there, and if they did, then they had to go do something with them. So I gave them a little bit of code to show them how they could list the folders they want to check and then loop over them and get the counts. I'm just trying to brainstorm, help you guys think of what could you use AutoHotkey for, right? So when people write me with stuff, I'm going to try to share, just because it helps stimulate ideas, right, of how can you use AutoHotkey, because often you don't realize different ways you can use it. So there's that. Viola Norbert, let me close IE here. Viola Norbert, here we go. This is a site where you can find people's email addresses. They have an API, and so I was playing with that. And you can take the names and I think their domain and pull back email addresses for that. So I was playing a little bit with that. UI verify. So UI verify. Oh, let me launch it. I had a call where I was actually working a job automating, which I rarely do, but I was automating. A friend of mine has a company, and they're spending a lot of time and energy automating entering data. And first it was, they said web scraping, and then it turns out it wasn't really web scraping. It was going to be connecting to a Citrix menu. And I'm like, well, that's a lot harder to automate, but we can do it with just image stuff. And then when I actually met him with them again, it was like, oh, actually, really what we're doing is we're automating stuff. I want you to automate stuff in an emulator on an Android. And so after I did that, I'm like, oh, okay. So now we're automating in like a Knox emulator, or I think what were they using? I forget what they're using. Genymotion. And so I said, okay, well, let's look at it. And so in that call, let me explain that one, because it's a good one to think through, right, for automation purposes wise. I didn't actually write any code. I first said, let me see if I can connect to the Citrix window and see if I can in any way do anything with it. Unfortunately, I couldn't connect to it. From talking to Tank and a couple other people, if I ran my script on their server, it would be able to, right? I could programmatically do it, but of course then I'd still have to program the whole thing while being on their server and doing stuff, and because that's where you'd have to have the diagnosis to see what's there, and I sure didn't want to be driving to downtown Dallas every day. Besides, that just seemed like a weird way to do it, and you'd have to run it from the server. I figured they didn't want that. But when I was automating it, Maestri and I were looking at it, and on the Knox side of things in the emulator on Android, and I was looking at how we can save the buttons. Oh, we can see we're here. Yeah, we're talking through how we can do it. And then I forget how, I was using Fiddler, and I was looking at the traffic, and I saw it writing to a MySQL database file. And I realized, hey, instead of us clicking the buttons, if we can write to that database file, then why would we click all the buttons, right? We can just send the data right into the database instead of clicking buttons to sending clicks, which would generate the SQL code to add it to a given table. That's what it's going to do, right? It's going to add it to the tables there. And then when they get back, it would sync it with their database. So I said, why, if we can connect to that database, that's great. And then I realized, well, actually, when they come back, they sync it into their main database. And so why use the Android and any of that stuff at all? Why don't we write the stuff directly to their tables? So after hours and hours, I shouldn't say that, because I didn't do the work, right? The internal people, I'd say, let's try this, let's try that, because I was trying to find a robust solution for them. It was going to take a lot of hours for us to automate, because it was the process of like adding one thing they were doing. It's too complex to explain, but it's like for a human to do it, let's say it's about 40 minutes, right, of clicking and doing stuff, really, for one, right? And then they have a lot. They're spending, I think they said 80 hours a week, somewhere in there, right, doing this. And imagine how mundane that is. So I was very hesitant to start doing something that I had to write a lot of code to not be very reliable, and so I was pushing them to try to find a better way. And it turns out they have all the internal people who have the SQL database tables, and they know the tables. And so hopefully we're going to go that route, because it'll be so much more reliable and fast and easier to code and easier to update and everything else. It's not going to break. So many benefits. So when we finally connected to the right group, they actually have an internal group of people who help automate and do some stuff. And so in that call, they mentioned they use, sorry, it's a long explanation. They use UI Verify for doing stuff. And so that's what this is, a shortcut here. Let me launch it. It is actually a tool, and there are other tools like it. Actually, I realized after doing it that you can use, but it you can go through and see like connect to programs just like you can in with like WinSpy and Simple Spy that Maestro and I wrote. But you can connect to some windows, especially like this ribbon. Let me go back. Where's Word? Let me bring it back over. This ribbon, of course, that stays on top. Try to get these where we can see a little bit. And somewhere in here, I thought, oh yeah, it's up in here. Mode, focus tracking. So I think now if I hover, maybe I got to activate it first. There we go. It should here in a second pick up that I'm over. Come on. Bullets. It should have updated where I was. Mode. Hover, use control. Oh, you know what? Let me turn this off and let me just hit control when I'm over it. I think that. There we go. So notice here it says bullets, right? And bullets here, and we can actually come in here. Let me see if I can click that. There are ways, anyway, it's a programmatical way to connect to and isolate. AutoHotkey has a hard time with these buttons in the new UI, I forget what it's called, but ribbon technology. And so this UI Verify is a way to connect to those, and with some other stuff. There's Jethro wrote a post about it quite a while ago, but there are ways to somewhat do it, but we don't have a tool like this. And so hopefully we can use a tool like this to figure out what we're trying to click, and then with AutoHotkey be able to do that. So I have hopes there, but after playing with a couple windows, we realized, yeah, it connects to some windows, but still there's a lot of programs it doesn't connect to. So I don't have incredible hopes for it, but it's still on my radar of things to work on. All right, so move this back over here. All right, so one of my businesses I'm working on is we're doing basically finding properties that are off market, and then we're gonna do skip traces, which is where you find the homeowners and stuff and track them down. One of the tool we're using is Ben Verified, and they don't have an API. Or at least they sort of do, but they don't make it available to anybody. And so we're going to be doing, let's say we're going to be calling like 1,000 phone numbers a day. We're actually working with a company in the Philippines to do the phone calls. So we're going to have live people. It's better than dead people. They call a lot better. We're going to have people call them and try to track down the homeowner. And if they do track down the homeowner, see if they're interested in selling. So we need a way to very quickly find the phone numbers for a given home. For the home owners listed usually by the tax records. And so in Ben Verified, they list usually like, I don't know, let's say 4 to 8 phone numbers. And so I'm going to, instead of using web scraping to go and load the page, which is going to be slow and painful, I started looking at the traffic behind it, and I could see after clicking the buttons, it was sending API calls. So literally the API was part of the URL, right? And so we could look at it, we could see JSON code coming back with phone numbers and addresses and home properties where they've lived. And so I was using the, let me see, I wrote it down here, the MS XML to .xml HTTP COM object instead of the WinHTTP request, I was using that one. And the reason why is because that one will automatically use your IE cookies, as well as some other credentials. It's a really positive thing. At the same time, you can't actually configure certain other things. Like I think your referring URL and some other stuff you can't control. However, it's awesome because we can use IE to log into the website and then start doing these, let's just call it XML HTTP requests. And that way, I don't have to deal with all the credentials, which is going to take me a while. And maybe I'll still program it at some point, but this way, there's really no way for them to tell that, like, I'm programmatically automating it instead of the browser, because the XML HTTP request is, if you look at your network traffic, you'll see, like, actually, let's fire up Chrome's open. Okay. So Control-Shift-I think brings up this menu. And now when I hit, let's click this, and we'll just to get some traffic. So I'm on the network tab, right? And right here, see this XHR? That is one way to see, like, this traffic I'm talking about, right? I believe that's the XML HTTP request stuff. And, but even if it's not, you can go in Fiddler, I think. Oh, actually, you know what? Let's see. Let me look at one of these and then click the headers. Where in the world were headers in this thing? I forget. I think maybe I had here we go. Okay. And then here's headers. I thought somewhere right in here. Oh, that's funny. Has that? I guess I was logged in. I thought in here it said it was the XML, and maybe this one wasn't, but I thought that's what part of this was instead of the all, which has a lot of other traffic. But anyway, this is a decent one. I still prefer Fiddler. I'm more familiar with it, but Chrome has some good tools for looking at network traffic. But this is what we were looking at and going, oh, you know what? I don't have to load the whole web page and everything else. They don't have a public API yet. I can do some of this other stuff without tipping my hand that I'm automating it. So let's see. That was using that one with been verified. So we're doing a property lookup, a people lookup, a lot of things with it to really help with that. Another one I played with, let's see if I can pull up my API folder, is, but I didn't write down which one it was. I'll sort it by the date, and should get it for Rapid API. Oh, I did. So in here, there was a words one, and this is one I took about 10 minutes and started playing with their words API. So my API is loaded in a secret, it's in an any file in the same folder. So this way I can share it and you don't see it. But let's say I'm going to run it. So there's the URL. I'm trying to see where the word is that I'm sending to it. Words hatchback, I think is the word we're going to use here. So I'm going to kick it off here and run it, and let's see what it does. So okay. So hatchback, it was it's from a car door, automobile, car, machine, motor car. There were a lot of different things I was looking at this, but this is another one it's free to play with. And then after a certain time, there's some costs, but you can use, I think they had like a thesaurus, they had, definitions, they had a bunch of different stuff. So I was playing with it. Again, it took me minutes because they didn't have a crazy, authentication to work through. And that's one of the things I love about many of the newer APIs. They're not really complex to deal with. I had another one. The USPS has a standardizing API for addresses. So let's get down here to USPS. And I think I did it in a different folder, but we'll get this general structure here. So you have to apply for an account. It's free, right? But you got to apply for an account, and then they give you a token value that you use. And so anyway, so I was looping through it, and I got a project where someone asked me to do it, and they paid me $300, right, to take a spreadsheet and take the addresses and make it flexible where when they have a new list, they can go look up. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. It'll take the addresses and pull back the standardized address for it and dump it into other columns next to it. And so that was a nice little bit of change, right, I made by knowing AutoHotkey and being able to use an API, connect it to Excel, and make it a cool, flexible tool that people can use whenever they want, right? It's very simple for them. LexisNexis, so I had done some automating for someone that was using LexisNexis to look up tax records of people that are, what's it called? They're behind in their taxes. I can't think of the right word. And so we had done some web scraping for them to do that. And they wrote me like, hey, this thing broke, you know, can you look at it? And sure enough, well, they even said, like, look, they changed the login, blah, blah, blah. Well, I look, well, they changed the whole URL where you're going to. They changed the website. The website was similar, but it was still very different. And so it broke a lot of stuff. So we're still working on fixing that. But it's one of those things why I much prefer using APIs over web scraping is this one I've never seen where people literally changed the URL and where you were going and where it was hosted and everything about it, right? There were so many things that were changed. It was crazy. Thankfully, though, a lot of the guts of once you got into it were the same. We still have to fix it, but it's getting closer. We're almost done with that. Updated my encryption tool. So let me show you. I think I have it here. I have this little encryption tool that I was talking. So I met a guy in Dallas here from that automation that I had done on LinkedIn. One of the guys was in Dallas. He accepted my invitation, and then I went back and looked, and he was in Dallas. So I wrote him, and I think it happened a while ago, but recently he had moved. That's what it was. So he said, I'll get back to you after the move's done. So anyway, a couple weeks ago, I met with him on the weekend, and we were talking about how you use AutoHotkey, and so he mentioned one way he does stuff for security reasons of storing files and his passwords, and he keeps them all in separate files. And so I mentioned this tool, which I guess I can put on my website or something. It's, I don't actually have the decryption function here, which is part of the security, right? But in concept, so when I run this, I can say, okay, what's the value you wish to encode? Let's say this was my password. Pizza is the bomb. And now when I hit OK, it's going to come back and give me, and I copied it to the clipboard, right? But pizza the bomb encrypted is, and it gives me this weird looking string, right? And now when I hit OK again, so that is right here. It's saying it's an input. It encrypted it. Send input raw. Where am I? Send input. No. Oh, right here. Message box pitch encrypted. Maybe I'm thinking of this is the wrong encryption tool. Yeah, hold on a second. Is there another? Now I'm lost. Okay. Oh, I'm in my library, that's why. Here we go. All right, let me exit both of these. Let's try this again. All right, so what do you want to encode? What did I say? Pizza's the bomb? We'll leave spaces in, it doesn't matter, right? And I'm gonna hit OK. And now it's gonna say, here's the encoded value. So this is this, and I think I actually shove it. Let's see right here. Message box, decoded, decrypted. Oh no, right here, encoded. So I do, right here on line 7, I shove it into the clipboard. And then I take it back and run it through my decryption one and show it back of what it is. Right here is decoded pizza. Oh, it's interesting. Did I mistype? Let's try that again. We can go back and watch a video, but yeah, I must have mistyped it. So it's all right here. This is the encryption encryptor and decryptor. But what's nice, what I do is you can, right up here, you pick your constant, right? So it's a random number that only you know. And then I use this to create that encoded value, right? And I shove that into a folder not under Dropbox, which is nice because that way, if someone gets into my Dropbox, it's not there. So they wouldn't have it with all my other files. And then I put the decrypt in my library, and then when I'm using it in my script, like let's go to my main script so you can see how I'm using it. Let's go to the very top. Somewhere in here. Yeah, I got a lot of hotkeys. Here we go. So when I hit Alt-1, it goes and pulls that value. It'll decrypt it, and it'll store it in Alt-1. Then it'll send it to what I'm using, and then blank out the variable and return. And that way it's not in memory, right? So if someone knows AutoHotkey and knows what they're doing, they can see my password, right? But again, it's in a different folder, which now you know the path because it's here, but no one has this. It's not on Dropbox. You have to have my physical computer. I called it this DigDog DLL just as a way to, obfuscate it. And it's just an easy way. That way it's not actually, the password itself isn't on my computer, right? It's encrypted. So the value stored on my computer is encrypted, right? It's a simple encryption, but it's encrypted. And it's a great, easy way to add a little bit of security to make it tougher for someone. It's not written right in here, which is what most people, of course, do. So I updated that a little bit to make it more flexible. So I've been working on that. The base 64 encoding tutorial, if you saw that with Maestriath, in the webinar, someone asked about base 64 encoding an image, and that way it'll store it as a string in your data. So you can take an image, a file, right? Not like just a picture of it, but the actual data from the file, the image, store it as a string, and then when you circulate your code with your colleagues or your peers or people that are paying for it, you don't have to give them a lot of different files. It's in a string in your file, and then it's fast because it'll encrypt and decrypt it. Well, but once you decrypt it, it'll be stored in memory and you can reference it, and it's very fast after you've done that. But it's a simpler way to share your code. So that was in the webinar. After that, I mentioned the Maestriath because I don't work with images. And so Maestriath walked me through. He built a little GUI and walked me through. So back on here, I think it's a second or third post now. This one. So he gave a little demo on how to go through and work with it. So this is the code we went through, but he talked through. Now, he hadn't prepped for this. We just we happened to be chatting, and I mentioned that I was blind and that kind of stuff, and so he offered to give me a review. So it's a little raw. He I think messed up a couple of I've updated them, but the image in this GUI is probably wrong because it's static. I could go back and update the thumbnail, but the code down here, you'll see 5 was 110, and in here, oh no, that was right. But a couple of them weren't correct, and so I went back and updated them. But anyway, it was a cool concept that I never work with. Again, I don't know if I'll ever use it, but it was his walking through how you're taking the data and encoding it in a binary format really, really helped me understand a lot more of working with binary data because I've never delved into it. And so it's a good intro to it, I think. And then another business we have with a different friend, we're web scraping data on books, and then we're going to help link them to places where you can buy them, and we're going to shove in affiliate links, of course, so hopefully we make money, but we're not going to charge people for the tool. But we're automating a way that makes it easy to go get the list of books that people might want because we know stuff about them, and then display it to them and make it easy for them to go and say, oh, here, I can see these books, great. Decide if they want to buy them. Our tool will be free, or should probably be free, and yet it'll give them some value, and hopefully if they buy stuff, we'll get money in the back door because of the affiliate stuff. The web scraping we're going to do with AutoHotkey, we're going to build both an app and a website that will take the ISBN numbers and look them up at like Amazons and other places and pull in information and the pricing about them. So that part we're not going to do without AutoHotkey because it'll be dynamic and live as they work. But that's going to be a fun project because it's also going to lend some other data about them that we can see and do a lot of stuff with it. So that's what I've been up to. I know it was a lot going fast, but like I said, these aren't really about coding. They're about concepts of what to work on and what I've been doing. That's just, I quickly looked at the stuff I had worked in over the past couple weeks, and it's been busy, and I've been busy. But I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll chat soon. Cheers.